So before we get to dancing, it's important to know the shoes behind all the action. Shoes are a dancer's armor. They protect your feet, they help you dance, and they're just the pinnacle of ballet in general. So when you start out with a pair of just flat ballet shoes like such. They bend in any way, shape, or form in order to build the strength of your foot. So it's consisted of a sole at the bottom, loose topping that's usually made out of linen, satin, or leather. The original pair of Pointe shoes in 1832 was by Maureen Talagoni, and she just had a pair of satin shoes just like such with a leather sole, as seen at the bottom of these, and then sewing at the very top of the shoe. She did this for the entire 2-hour production of La Cinq, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Here's my bucket of Pointe shoes. Each one of these babies costs about $100. This is about $1,000 in a bucket right here. Each Pointe shoe will last you about 24 hours of wear on point, and then after that, they start to get a little bit mushy, as so. But a new pair of Pointe shoes is hard. That gives you the platform to stand on. A Pointe shoe is made out of many different parts. So you have the shank, you have the vamp, you have the box itself, which is at the top, and then you have the heel area right here. When you get a pair of Pointe shoes, there is no difference between right or left. They are just the same type of shoe. So it is the ballerina's responsibility to mark whether they are right or whether they are left, and eventually break them into your own feet. This can be a quite painful process, and many ballerinas I know quite dread it. A Pointe shoe is made up of many different parts. So what the box is made of, it may seem really hard, and many people may think it's made out of wood, but actually it's just a lot of paper mache glued together to make a very strong box. So you have your first layer here, which is a pair of satin, and then you have your second layer here, which is a little bit of a cushion, and you have a third layer, which is really scratchy, and then you have 2 layers here, which are made out of pulp, and then you have one final just linen layer that protects the inside of your foot. Dancers, when they start off on Pointe, like to sit on the very back of their shoe. As such, this is one of my first pair of Pointe shoes I ever worn. So you can see the very tip right here, it's really worn down. But as you become a more experienced dancer, you get to use the entire box. As you see, it is worn down just a little bit. These are quite new. The shank itself is made out of leather and it is stitched. Every single pair of Pointe shoe is handmade. On the inside here, you can see how it's a little bit worn down. But if you pull back the layer, it also has many different layers of cushion behind it, as such. There are many different things a dancer does to protect their one's feet while they're on Pointe, especially if you're doing multiple rehearsals a day, multiple times a week. So many people think they just slip the Pointe shoes right on with no protection whatsoever. This is not true. We are not that stupid. We have come up with great technology since Marie Talagoni in 1832. So many dancers have what we call toe pads. So this is a gel toe pad. So it kind of has gel, kind of like the insoles of shoes. And then on the inside it is layer to just make sure your feet don't get too sweaty. But as you see here, they wear down quite easily. So as you become a little bit more experienced and spend more time on Pointe, it is a good idea to invest in one of these, which is all the way fabric and linen on the outside and cushion kind of gel on the inside. Dancers also like to use medical tape before they even use all the other protective gear. This is just a good preventative measure to make sure that you don't get too bad blisters, although they're still probably inevitably going to happen. When you get a pair of Pointe shoes, they do not come pre-sewn. And many people would think, well, I paid $100 for these shoes, why don't they come pre-sewn? Well, many dancers like to sew their shoes in different ways, and people's feet are made very differently. So you have the elastic here that you would like to put at the very edge of the shank, right at behind the seam, right here. And then you have a ribbon, which is either satin or can be elastic. When you start off on Pointe, you kind of want to use satin ribbon just because it's honestly harder this way. And why would you want to make it harder for beginners? It's so that you build up your muscles in your ankles so you can better do it later. You can use normal thread for Pointe shoes, but this can kind of come a little bit undone, especially with a lot of wear and tear. So lots of dancers like to use a really strong string. I even know some dancers that use dental floss. Pointe shoes have about 24 hours worth of wear in them when you're on Pointe. And after that, they start to get a little squishy. Sometimes to prevent this squish, especially if you can't afford a new pair of Pointe shoes at the time, you use super glue. And you can just super glue the bottom of the shoe and maybe even the shank if that's starting to feel a little bit wobbly on you. So a lot of people think that the weight of a ballerina is all on the tip of the shoe. This isn't really the case. As you can see here, shank is pretty strong. It takes a decent amount of effort for me to bend it. And there's a nice platform right here for your arch to go. So a lot of the weight of the ballerina actually goes at the heel right here and is supported by this shank. There's still a small percentage of the body weight that is supported by the toe, and this is not very glamorous. I was diagnosed with arthritis at the very ripe age of 16. So I want to give a disclaimer to never go up on Pointe without proper instructions or training. You could break an ankle or possibly worse. But I hope my little spiel today could give you a little inside view of what really is happening on stage.